वाहेगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहेगुरु जी की फतेह. After listening to this interaction that took place just now, I felt this before I came as well, that maybe this invitation that you have given me, this honor that you have bestowed upon me, perhaps I am not equal to the task. And after hearing the conversation that took place, on which I have also quite strong views, excellence versus resistance, excellence versus opposition, and excellence versus, a fight on principles. I have quite some views on that as well. But it was an interesting debate to me, and I'll say a few words on that. I won't abstain because I'm not a Sikh, but I will certainly say a few words on that. The sufferings in Punjab of the 1980s and after that is something unbearable, unbelievable. There's no doubt about that, and I can't really comment on that today. It's not necessary because it is like in every Sikh's heart. Whether you're young or old, every Sikh knows what happened to his fathers and brothers and all those who were massacred in the killings that took place. It was genocide, pure and simple. There are those that say you must not use the term genocide, because genocide is only used for things like when Hitler attacked the Jews and so on. But I think the modern use of the term genocide was perfectly applicable in the case of the Sikhs and the killing, both in the Punjab as well as in Delhi. What makes it 10 times worse is that there was no remedy, there was no justice, and the courts were totally compromised, and the human rights commissions were not worth it at all, and the Supreme Court played its own role of adjourning and wasting time and appointing commissions and so on. And you only have to look at the history of the legal system in that period. This legal system about which we say so many nice things about the Indian law and the system being the best in the world. It was a pathetic failure of justice. And I know I hear it said not only for the Sikhs, but I hear it said for other communities as well. Why don't you leave the past behind? Why don't you leave the past behind? Why are you reopening wounds that have healed? And I think this is the most casual, insulting way of speaking to a community that has suffered such grievous loss. They don't keep their wounds alive because they want to. They keep their wounds alive because what was required for the healing of the wound, the doing of justice, was never done. Society should think why the wounds are alive and ought not to look at the community that has suffered and ask them to close their own wounds. Not possible. And this whole thing about injustice and the state not responding, and why it's very important today, it's not just history. It's not just something that happened many, many decades ago. It is something that is the reality of India as we stand today. Then we had the arrogance of Indira Gandhi. Then we had the cruel temperament to send in the army and kill people. You may have had compulsions. There might have been other ways of doing it. The Indian state is a very powerful state. Surely one person in the Punjab and, one intense, let us say, uprising of some persons in the Punjab, surely the Indian state is not called into question or threatened by that. Surely a leader should know that the Indian state and India is much, much bigger than a rebellion, powerful though it may be. And maybe the Indian state should look at ways of resolving issues apart from killing. Killing is in our blood. Killing is in the blood of the state. Killing is in the mentality of the state. Killing is in the culture of our Indian state. We can find other ways. We can do things better. We can be humble. The Prime Minister can be humble. The Prime Minister can acknowledge mistakes. The Prime Minister can say, I'm sorry. The Prime Minister can say, yes, injustice was done to the people of Punjab. You are trying to solve it by arms, I'll try to solve it by peace. Give me time, forgive me for my mistakes. But that is not the DNA of the Indian state. Whoever takes power at Delhi, killing is in their blood. Lying to the people is in their blood. Misusing power is in their blood. Corruption is in their blood. So whether it was Indira Gandhi of the years that have gone past, or whether it is of the present dispensation in Delhi, there is very little difference. And so today for the Sikhs, there's a very important role for you to play. Because you have suffered as a community and you have suffered terribly. And you know the mistakes of the past. And you know the conduct of government. And you know how dangerous governments can be. And prime ministers and home ministers and defense secretaries. You know how dangerous they can be. And now you must use that emotional past, that intellectual understanding. You have to use that to solve the problem of India today under the present dispensation. Is it any different, really, from Mrs. Indira Gandhi's government? Is it really very different? Or are we as in deeper crisis today with the present government as we were then? Do we have anyone to whom we can look up to as a leader of India and say, I trust this person, I trust this group, they are capable of taking us to a new India? I don't think we look around and see anyone. Do the young of India have anyone to follow? Any beacon light to say, that's where I must go? Nobody. Which means that India is in such a severe crisis from which it cannot get out. It cannot, if we do a business as usual approach. It cannot come out. And it can only come out if the dispossessed, the victims, those who have been mistreated, maltreated, badly treated, tortured, excluded, discriminated against, if those people rise up and say, we are the sufferers in India. And although our suffering may not mean much to you, the rest of the community, we have a vision of how things should not be. And we have an understanding of how things should be. And we want to take charge now. The good people of India, those who are spiritual, those who don't aspire to great property and great wealth, those who don't aspire to dabao another section because it's weaker, or because their religion is this, or their caste is this. The Indian people are there, and they are good, and they are in the majority, but they must learn. And they must get that self-confidence that they can change India and change it for the better. Your community has a very important role to play. Ordinary people from your community. You don't need great leaders. Young people. You have a very important role to play because you have suffered. I want to say a few words and then come back to this theme again. I was only provoked to take this up because of a very interesting discussion that took place. And I believe in resistance. Because if the state is so bloodthirsty, and if corruption and violence and discrimination and the pushing down of the poor and the dispossessed is so much in our blood, resistance is the way forward. I personally believe in non-violent resistance, but there are those who don't believe in that, and I respect that. I want to say I respect that. Because I don't expect that everyone who is brutalized will fold his arm and bow his head and say, sir, keep on beating me. I don't believe that. I as a person, I don't preach it. I as a person am not temperamentally suited for that kind of courage. It takes a courage of a particular sort. But I am very slow to condemn it. If with powerful forces you enter a village and take a tribal village and say that this is my private army, I am taking your land to build a mine. It happens in Jharkhand, it happens in Chhattisgarh, it happens in many tribal areas across the country. 100, 200 armed people coming in on behalf of a corporation, take over large tracts of land to do mining, bribe the local administration and push the tribals off their land. And then they go to the Naxalites and they say, sir, you please protect us, we believe you can fight. We condemn the Naxalites and we condemn them. But we don't condemn the persons, the powerful persons who come to dispossess them by use of force, do we? So I'm very respectful of people who resist. I don't have the courage to resist also sometimes. I believe we must look into our own souls and see whether we have courage really as a person. I came from a meeting where many of my friends had, there was a discussion on the Bhima Koregaon and the people put in jail by this government. Bhima Koregaon were fighting for the rights of tribals. Sudha Barajwa, the tribals in Chhattisgarh, oh, I knew her for so many years, all her life, small little room, doing work mostly for free, bringing up her daughter in those conditions in the areas of Chhattisgarh. Spent 4 years in jail. Surendra Gadling, my friend from Nagpur, spent all his life in a Naxalite-infested area, doing legal aid. And then they put him in jail. It's his 5th year. They put him in jail because he did legal aid for Naxalites. But Naxalites come in their shorts and their vests. They don't come with a placard saying, I'm a Naxalite. And Gadling had no worry at all. He said, you may be Naxalite, you may not be Naxalite. I really don't care. If you are dispossessed, if you are beaten, if you are tortured, I'll take up your case. And they hated him for that. And Gadling is in jail for the last 5 years. It breaks my heart to see my friends. They had more courage than me, much more courage. And I don't know if I'll have the courage if I'm put in jail for speaking out fearlessly against government. If you look at all the UAPA cases, if you look at every one of them, from the Pinjra Tod group in Delhi, 18-year-old, 19, 20-year-old college-going girls whom they put in jail for 1 year, to Gogoi in Assam, to all these people who were in jail, Vernon and so on. There's a startling thing that emerges in terrorism cases, startling thing that emerges. Terrorism means warfare against the state. Simple. It means rising up against the state and the public doing warfare against the state established by law. And if you look at all these persons, when they went before the judge, when they were arrested and taken before the judge, the charge sheets were filed. And the lawyers argued, I argued 1 or 2 cases, I argued, sir, this is not terrorism, sir. This is just very trenchant criticism of government. Very articulate, very bold, very rough maybe. Maybe words are used which should not be used. But this is nothing but criticism of government, which the government cannot bear. Particularly today's government, it is said. You can't bear. You have such an idea of your self-importance and ego and your power and your greatness. You can't bear the criticism of the ordinary person. To be a ruler, one must be able to listen to anyone and to hear the language of resistance in strong language and say, sir, please forgive me. You're right. Help me come on the correct path. That's all you need for a truly spiritual leader for this country. And that is what this country deserves. So if you look at all those cases, the judges postponed the cases for 4 or 5 years, saying the charge sheets are too big, I can't make out, I'll need time to study. But all that the judge had to do on day 1, when the accused person was brought before him, the magistrate, all that the judge had to do was to ask, Mr. Prosecutor, show me one page where he has engaged or she has engaged in violence. So the startling thing about prosecution, so many of our persons in jail, I call them the modern freedom fighters of India. And I think in your community, you have many modern freedom fighters whom perhaps your community also may not acknowledge. They are freedom fighters. Against the British they fought. Against the British they used means that were fair, that were foul. They did all kinds of things to the British. The fight against the British was not a non-violent struggle at all. I don't endorse violence, I say it again. But history must be true to itself. What is the stuff about, the Indian movement against the British? The Indians got independence by non-violence? Come on. Indians fought the British every step of the way. Rulers and small rulers and everybody took up arms against the state. The British left India not because we went on hunger fasts against them. Gandhi rightly went on hunger fast. Gandhi, I think, is a true leader of India. But it's not because of pacifism and non-violence that the British left India. They left because they knew what was in store for them if they continued to tackle Indians and continued to pretend, continued to rule Indians as if they were a dominion. So history is complicated, very complicated. And respect for the other side and respect for the other view is something also sometimes doesn't come easy to us. Anyway, they were all released after 5 years. Gautam Navlakha came out quickly. He was lucky to come out quickly. The others came out. Vernon, all the others came out after 5 years. And what do the judges say in their interim order granting bail? Interim order, which should have come day one. 5 years later, the order is, if you look at all these cases, we are sorry not to agree with the prosecution. We are bound to release the accused on bail because we can find no material against the accused to justify the charge of terrorism. 5 years later. So we are in a situation like akin to Indira Gandhi's emergency, but now even more powerful. Because now the forces of religion have been harnessed, which was not there in Indira Gandhi's time. Now the forces of religion have been harnessed in a bad way, in a wrong way, in a cruel way, in the ways of a Rakshas. You use religion for things that are totally anti-religion. Religion speaks of peace, non-violence, tolerance, accommodation, secularism. But now the forces of religion, harnessed in this wrong way, make a political party incredibly strong. And so now the battle will be longer and the struggle will be fierce. I want to say a few words, going back to the Punjab issue and not digress too much. We all saw the suffering, but the matters came to court. And Paramjit Kaur filed a case in the Supreme Court, saying that she filed the newspaper reports of the killings all across Punjab. And the court's immediate response was very good. It wasn't like the courts today. I must say the courts today are a shadow of their former self. They say we are shocked to see in the papers about the killings by the police, alleged killings by the police, etc., etc. And we direct the CBI to immediately take up the investigation of all these reported fake encounters by the Punjab police. That case came up, and ultimately, at the same time, the Supreme Court said, the NHRC should look at this. The NHRC should also look at these killings. So I was there in the NHRC for many years. My colleagues and I did a lot of documentation. And from our colleagues in the Punjab, we got a lot of help and we filed all those documents. You won't believe what happened. The courts are also places of warfare. The courts are also places where people die. It was incredible. The story was fake encounters. You remember in the papers the story of the Punjab police with the fake encounters. These young boys took up guns, came at us, they opened fire, we fought in self-defense, and they died. That was the story. But in the NHRC, they said, these boys were in our custody. We held them before us like human shields. They used that term. It's a war crime to take a prisoner of war and go, you know. It's a war crime. But the Punjab police were so bold as to say in their affidavits, we took them as human shields and marched ahead. And when we came to the den of the terrorists, they opened fire, we opened fire, and this man died. Can you imagine? An open admission in the largest democracy in the world of using a tactic which is akin to a war crime. So it wasn't that they opened fire and that we fought in self-defense and we shot these young boys. It was that we took them as human shields and the terrorists who were hiding fired at us and killed the boys. A totally different story. Now look at what Dr. Anand did. Dr. Anand was the chairperson of he was the Chief Justice of India. Good man actually, good judge actually. But look at what he did in the NHRC. This is some information that may not be easily available to some except to Fulka Sahib and other friends like him. For killings, for the death of a person for being used as a human shield, he gave us 2 lakhs per death. And I cannot imagine an insult, more grievous insult than the insult that he handed down to us in his judgment, that yes, we agree, you must be compensated for deaths, but we'll give you 2 lakhs for deaths. And that 2 lakhs also came maybe 10 years after the death or 15 years after the death. So if you count interest, you basically got about 5,000 rupees compensation for killing a young boy in your custody. So then we pointed out that, sir, the bodies were burnt without allowing the parents to take the bodies. You are duty bound to hand over the bodies of the deceased to the families so that at least after taking away their sons, they would be treated, the burial or whatever would be done according to the Sikh rites and customs. He said, I agree. And he gave me 1 lakh for denial of burial rights. Can you imagine? So the cruelty of the legal system, I understand very well. I practice a lot and I do a lot of work in the courts, and I understand it is an avenue for redressal of grievances. But I understand the cruelty of the system and the rottenness of the system. And how, just as you will fight to revive resistance in the Punjab and elsewhere in the country, we also fight to revive the judiciary, which is rapidly dying. So that's what he did, 2 lakhs and 1 lakh. And poor Paramjit Kaur was very sad in the end. I think she got very demoralized by the state of affairs. Then the next stage was the CBI investigations. And I must say, by then, I think the government in Delhi had changed, the dispensation had changed. The CBI began to do the investigation reasonably well. And contrary to the stand of the government that they were killed, because they opened fire on our forces, they were killed, the CBI filed charge sheet after charge sheet against the police officers who had killed these persons. And if you read those charge sheets, they make very interesting reading. They do investigation of a thorough kind. Not many, I mean, there were so many people killed, but ultimately a very small portion of people were investigated properly. They found every one of them was killed in cold blood. They also interviewed the people in jails who were with the deceased person when he was alive. He was a co-prisoner in jail, and they asked the prisoner, what happened to him? And the co-prisoner would say, sir, he was taken out one morning. He was here for 3-4 months. He was brutally tortured. He had wounds on his body. And then one early morning, one day, he was taken out, and I heard that he was killed by them, sir. So the CBI meticulously put those evidence together. That is important for the history of Sikhism also, and the resistance to what happened and the history of that period, so that it is properly written and properly understood by people. And even as you will read the papers in the next few years also, you will see that many of them have got convicted. And their appeals in the High Court and Supreme Court, even some of the appeals up to the Supreme Court have been dismissed. And some of those officers, they didn't expect that a senior officer or a middle-level police officer would ever be put in jail like a common criminal for killing a person. Because as I said, killing is in the blood of the police. We talk about the British police, but if you look at the British police today and compare it with our Indian police, the British police is a far more civilized force than the Indian police will ever be. So the CBI cases were going on and the interviews were going on. And in group after group, people are getting some kind of relief. Now I want to come to today and say a little bit about the situation in India today. And this issue of leaving the past behind. There is something special about the Sikh community. I'm not a great academic or a great theorizer of things, but I look closely at people who are spiritual, whose traditions are spiritual, and who are willing to give up their life for their cause. That notion, that as a human being you're willing to give up your life for a cause you believe in, that is something close to my heart. I'm not a religious person also. I don't go to church. I don't do any of these things. But the imagery of Jesus Christ on the cross, nailed to the cross and giving up his life for his opposition to paying taxes to Caesar. He got a very bad reputation because he struggled for the peasantry. And there were very heavy taxes imposed by the administration. And he opposed the giving of those taxes. That's one part of the story, I suppose, Jesus Christ. This history must be having a very interesting history. He wasn't a god at all. I believe he was just an ordinary human being. Maybe I don't believe in gods, that's why I say that. He must have been a very great yogi to do the things that he did. Having mastery over yogic practices and meditation and spiritualism and so on. And he had a famous saying. He said when he was asked by the Roman administration. They wanted to provoke him and they asked him, Jesus, what do you say? What do you say about paying taxes to Caesar? And he said, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. It was a nice and polite way of, announcing his resistance to the paying of tax by the peasantry, to the Romans and so on. So giving up your life for what you really believe in. I have many Sikh friends and many of them were in our cases that we did together. And I am although I feel many of our community have perhaps over time slowly that feeling of spiritualism ebbs away. But the stories of our gurus and how they fought against injustice and how they how they were tortured and knew that they were going to die, but they died happily, going to the next world, saying that they would not relent against this injustice. How many examples you have? We have one in Christianity. I don't know how many examples, living examples, you have in other religions, but you have it in your religion. And I think that's what makes your community so special. And that's what this rebelliousness or anti-administration. That these are simpler ways of saying things, cruder ways of saying things. I think it comes easily to people who are in this tradition to stand up and resist and to say, I don't agree. I will not succumb. I will not do as you say. I'm sorry. We will not agree. I think it comes easier to people who grow up in a spiritual tradition. And you're lucky for that, really. But you are also unlucky. Because the things you'll be called upon to do are some things that have terrible consequences. This government is as big a Rakshas as any government we have seen. It has the support of people. Yes, and I recognize that, and we must be respectful of the government because it has harnessed, like I said, religion in a totally wrong way. Hindutva has nothing to do with Hinduism. I'm married into a Hindu family. Very reluctantly, I slowly began to understand Hindu religion and the Vedas and, from the Hindu point of view. But Hindutva has nothing to do with Hinduism. Hindutva is, I shouldn't say much today because if you say much, you'll be taken in sedition. And I'll find myself in jail after lecturing so much about sedition and words. But we are living in very fearful days. I gave you the example of my friends who are in jail, but it is spreading. And this victory that we won is the sign of people's resistance. That is correct. And it gives rise to certain enthusiasm. It gives rise to optimism. It even gives rise to joy. Excuse me. But that joy may be premature. Because this man is very powerful. And he's very clever. And he's very hardworking. And he's got the skills of a very, very good politician with wrong values. Wrong values, but good politician. He will recover. He will get his forces around himself. He will use the vast resources that is beck and call to win people over to his side. What do we have to do? What do we have to do in the years to come to see? The farmers' agitation gave us the finest example of resistance. What a fine example of resistance. Sitting at the gates, we set up a tent ourselves. The Human Rights Law Network also, we had our lawyers and we sat at a tent. And we participated in the programs and so on. It was such a spiritual experience. Such a wonderful experience to see. To see, first of all, ordinary people take charge. Ordinary young men and women. Not only the great leaders, ordinary men and women sitting resolutely for more than a year. How much was it? 1 year and a half or so. Resolutely sitting. In the rain, we saw them drenched. In the cold, we saw them shivering. Always sharing food, always looking after people, always caring for people. The farmers' agitation, which I think we don't give it the respect it deserves, and we don't put it into our theoretical and academic understanding of what it signifies politically, is the sign of the future. It was a resistance, it was a movement against injustice, because the farmers of Punjab and the farmers of the India have been cheated for decades after decades. MSP is only a tip of the iceberg, but an important tip of the iceberg. How do you calculate MSP? Swaminathan said 50%, increased by 50% over cost of production. There was committee after committee of the courts, of the government of India, making recommendation for tenant farmers, for women's farmers, for crop insurance, for suicide prevention. Not one of those reports, beautiful reports. I always look for revolutionary things in literature and academics, and I found it there in the reports, in these government reports on what should be done, but never done. So farmer discontent is very high. The families who committed suicide, we did a tribunal where we brought a Supreme Court judge. And that Supreme Court judge sat for 2 or 3 days listening to the testimony of the wives of the farmers who died. And there can be nothing so sad than to listen to their stories. Cruel stories of how the banks came to recover their loans. And the law says that if you're bankrupt, you can't recover a loan. The bank says if you are bankrupt, the law does not permit you to recover a loan. You're not supposed to go into the farmer's house and take his charpai. You're not supposed to go and take his utensils. You're not supposed to go and take his cattle. You can't take his scooter because he uses it for livelihood. All items linked to livelihood cannot be appropriated by a bank in recovery of a debt. And then I went to the civil prisons where I found the farmers' families in civil prisons. It's a prison run by the civil administration where, like, you have these shutters, for your shops. It's like that, and you put the shutter down and you put the shutter up and you look through the top part and you can see the man inside. My blood boils. And I have a feeling when I saw the results that the blood of the people of India is boiling. I think, सहन करना, I don't think, मुझे नहीं लगता है कि सहन करना, this सहन करो, business will go down much more. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And it is good, because India is a young country. It has the youngest population of those below 30. So as time passes, the young will come and become 40s. And the young will not do what the old are telling them. The young will not follow when the old tell them, you be careful, you be slow, be respectful, don't do this, don't do that. The young will not listen. And in the farmers' agitation, the young did not listen. We saw that. The leaders were telling them, do it like this, do it like that. They were going in their own way. And frankly, when it happened and when a small group broke away and went to Red Fort, the rebellious nature in my heart and soul said we should be there also. I wanted that we should also go to Red Fort. What a wonderful thing it would be. That the farmers of India assemble at Red Fort by force. We go, we don't respect anything, we don't want to do violence against anybody, but we go and gather at Red Fort in large numbers. And we speak of India, we speak of our rights, and we speak of freedom and justice for all Indians. It would have happened. There was some self-restraint from certain quarters. But anyway, movements are like that. You get all kinds of people in a movement. So now that is, 2 minutes more. Now I'll just summarize, sum up some things. What happened during Indira Gandhi's time is happening today. I told you that. In Uttar Pradesh, the kind of fake encounters that took place in the Punjab are happening in Uttar Pradesh on a very large scale. That yogi man has no regard for law at all. And he openly speaks of, things. And if you don't even have to read between the lines, because he's advocating that if a man is supposed to be a suspect, you go ahead and deal with him and dispose of him. In Manipur, we had killings. From May last year to May this year in Manipur, 170 Kuki tribals were killed. We went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court did nothing. Chief Minister supported the killing. Home Minister supported the killing. The police force in Manipur, which is of that community, the dominant community, supported the killing. And the Kukizo tribals took up arms and defended themselves. They had no one to help. Among the Kukizos, there's a case I'm doing of a Kukizo tribal, Mark, who on his Facebook post said, I dream of Kuki land, just as people may dream of, rightly or wrongly. I don't condemn all this. Somebody may say Khalistan. I don't condemn, I don't say. It's for the Sikhs to decide. You say Khalistan Zindabad, is it a crime? How many people have been taken for saying Khalistan Zindabad. And there's a Supreme Court judgment, I don't know if you remember, Balbir Singh's case, where a young man in Amritsar came out and said, Khalistan Zindabad. He was a little bit more provocative. He said, we should get our Sikh brothers, we should arm ourselves, and we should get land and have a Khalistan. It's an expression of a point of view. We're a powerful nation. We're not intimidated by A saying this or B saying that. You can't. Getting Khalistan is again a procedure in the UN. You must show extreme discrimination. You must show majority of the Sikhs want to go. It's not an easy thing. So if a person says, I want Khalistan, first of all, it's not an illegal thing to say. In international law, to give vent to an aspiration is not a wrong thing to do, like this cookie boy, and he's in jail for 2 years. In Kashmir, the killings carry on, and we've given up, I think all of us have given up on Kashmir. And we had this, I'll end maybe. And then we had the Delhi riots, and it shows that we haven't learned. Where this minister Anurag Thakur said, and we caught him on video, proud, in front of a gathering, Desh ke gadaro ko goli maro salo ko. Repeat after me, Desh ke gadaro ko goli maro salo ko. And we got it on video and we filed a case in the Supreme Court on hate speech. Pure poison, pure hate speech. So my dear friends, I want to say now, I'll finally, sorry sir, 2 minutes exactly. There was a slapping incident where a policewoman came and slapped somebody. I have a different view on this. My friends are all very, you shouldn't do that. She was in uniform, you should not do. And I think of the people, how many officers in uniform killed people. How many of them tortured us? Nobody said you're in uniform, you should not do this. She slapped him, she slapped her, and then she adds insult to injury by saying, I'm worried about terrorism in the Punjab. One, ek chota sa tappad mil gaya, so she says the whole of Punjab is terrorist. I think we need to think differently, talk differently, react differently, and understand that in the veins of the people of India, in the blood of the people of India, there is a powerful human rights movement growing, which we cannot understand, we cannot control. We want it to be in a non-violent way, so we steer it in that direction of law and so on. It's powerfully growing. You will be part of it. It'll happen in your lives. I hope it'll happen in my lives, but it'll happen in your lives. And that is the role you must play, and that is the role you are born to play. Because you were born in a particular community at a particular time, and you were given a particular upbringing, a wonderful upbringing. And with that, my dear friends, thank you very much. And I'm sorry if I've offended anybody.
Thank you, Mr. Collin. I think you've given the bird's eye view of the Indian political as well as the legal system. And we're really grateful to you. I can only quote 2 cases of the human right violations. One is the Mr. Khalda's disappearance. He had the courage to survey and roam around the Punjab borders and picked up 11,000 cases which were unclaimed, which were deaths on the people, the bodies were cremated unannounced in the various cremation grounds. And he had the evidence taken from the person concerned, who are the police officers responsible for the killing. Now everything was ready and he was to present the paper to the High Court for moving further, but he was forcibly arrested, taken to custody, and eventually disappeared. He was killed. Now the second case of the human rights violation, which is very fresh again, is You had a Satnam Singh Bench and his wife coming from UK all the way. They were working in India under a lot of threats, but they could gather about over 7,000 cases and the evidence, full evidence. That case has been put up in the Punjab and Haryana High Court. He had to run away from here, fearing his death, because a lot of threats were sent to him by various concerned. Who are the agencies, I won't know, I can't name them, but could be some of the local intelligence agencies may be also involved. Because we have not been able to take care of the human rights violation in a big way. So this is another case which is in present. So rest, Colin will know about it, what all is happening on the issue. With this, I think we have, you have a question on the human right or what? Human right or what? Or what Mr. Colin said? Okay, just one question only.
Thank you for organizing this. I just wanted to, firstly, I was very glad to hear both of you express points. One about excellence. We saw that in recent times, COVID, if anything it did, it helped the Sikh community get global recognition for the excellence in seva. And I have said this at many forums, that if you start looking at everything as seva, whether it is coming in the political domain and looking at it as a seva and entering active politics, that's the only way to change the direction of this country. Or if you start taking cases head on in the Supreme Court, that's also excellence of a kind, and that's needed by the Sikh community today. Mr. Gonzalez, when you started, I was so pleased that you spoke about what should we all be doing, and why aren't Sikhs involved in Manipur today? Because we can probably offer that healing touch. I have done my bit. I was the one who filed the case in the Supreme Court, which brought the arms loot to an end, which was going on for 4 months. It was my intervention application which led to that happen. Nobody is talking about it in the country, that how badly our national security has been affected with thousands of weapons in the hands of warring factions, 14,500 bombs, 7 lakh bullets, nearly 7,000 guns, and nobody's bothered. And you rightly said, you know, it has all happened with the blessings of the central government, the Home Minister, the Chief Minister, and everyone involved. Why aren't we there taking active participation? I, in fact, called for a protest in the Supreme Court, and I was told that there were orders for me to be picked up because of that. Because I said a Supreme Court, if it cannot listen to a civil war which is happening for 6 months, last date in the Manipur matter was 15th of December. After that, the Chief Justice's bench has not listed that matter. This is the seriousness of our Supreme Court. We should be actually out on the streets and saying that it is not just a matter of Manipur, but it affects national security. And Sikhs should play a larger role in everything which is about this nation, because we should stop thinking this is about discrimination about Sikhs.
Okay, I think he has understood it. I'd like to say a comment on this.
I have actually a question related to this.
Okay.
I will just make another small sharing about the farmers' protest. I was there and eventually understood the problems. And on the 5th of May, my petition about MSP, as well as challenging India becoming a signatory to WTO, has been admitted and notice has been issued to the central government and Ministry of Commerce. So we are taking up that issue in a very big manner, which affects 60% of the population. My question to both of you in the end is the role of the armed forces. That 84, they were commanded or ordered to go into Harmandir Sahib. Could they have said that no, this is not right, we will not act? Similarly, today in Manipur, the armed forces are sitting, not acting for almost a year, and there's a civil war going on. But the last comment which I heard from the Eastern Command General, GOC, was that this is a political problem and it will be a political solution. And in this political problem, 215, 20 people have died, 3,000 plus injured, and 70,000 people have been displaced. An entire state has been turmoiled. And more importantly, they have now the model set on what to do with the entire country if they wish to, that how simply such large amounts of arms and ammunition can just be handed over and nobody will be held to account. So my question is that can't we eventually hold the armed forces to account that if your political masters are not doing what they're supposed to do, they are betraying their oath to the constitution, to the citizens, why don't you at least obey your oath to the citizens as employees of the people of India?
Okay, let them not say that. I think you've said enough. What do you like to say? You don't want to say anything. Ramesh, kuch? You like to say something? It's a very difficult question.
Very brief comments. Then you will have a situation like Pakistan very soon. If army was to itself says that we are coming. There is a chapter in my book where I have called Punjab as a garrison state, which deals with how army interacts with the civil administration. If you're interested, you can look into this. But to add to what Mr. Gonsalves has said, basically you can pick up on individual cases, so many killed, so and so killed here. The problem is that we are not addressing the system. In case of Punjab, for example, what they did was, the academicians have now given it a terminology, Gill Doctrine. What was the Gill Doctrine? That eliminate militants without conceding to their demands. Now, nowhere in the government file you will find this doctrine or this direction, But if that becomes your strategy to deal with a problem, the commands go down the hierarchy and then excesses take place. That's what happened in Punjab. After the end of militancy, there were, which Gonsalves has referred to, thousands of petitions to Human Rights Commission, writ petitions in the High Court, Supreme Court. And today, mind you, even judiciary then was sleeping. Today, there are more than 100 former police officers who have been convicted. Some of them are still in prison, some of them are on bail. This month only one DIG and 4 or 5 officers, retired of course, were convicted of what you call disappearance cases, which is fake encounter, you see. But if that becomes a state policy, there is no solution to that. So you have to address the system. Yes, fight individual cases, that has to be done, defend them, get their rights. But unless you address a systemic change, it will keep on happening. A party, B party, C party, today, tomorrow, day after. You see, that is the problem. The reason today why you find on the wrong footing in international fora is because Western liberalism expects you not only procedure established by law, but due process of law. Here you follow, kagzi karwai complete kar lo ji, procedure established by law. You see, that is the problem. Thank you.
You see what he said, Kagzi Karwai, we'll just close it up quickly now. I remember Chief Secretary Punjab, Mr. Vasudev, he would bear it out. He confessed and mentioned to us that during '84, 5 bureaucrats were picked up from Chandigarh, taken to Delhi, and asked to sign on the dotted line, giving approval for the action in Punjab, in Amritsar. This is before the army attack. So all the formalities were completed in Delhi. They signed the dotted line and came back. And Vasudevan says that I was, as a chief secretary, I was not even consulted. My IG intelligence not even consulted, who knew everything. So this is part of the game. You can't say more than that. This is a factual state. Mr. Fulka wants to say something. I think he's already said that. Who
young journalist by name Ashwini Sareen. You will remember he wrote in Indian Express, dated 1st November, 2nd November and 3rd. The scathing, eye-opening things which he wrote, I think we should all consult that. That's one. And second, we talked about Mr. Banga. Rightly so. There are many more in terms of excellence. I can't resist putting the name of Mr. N.S. Kapani. He died recently at the age of 96. Yes. I think we should all read about what he did. All about optical fibers. It is his contribution. Yes. Three generations of his students got Nobel Prize. He was not given. So that's another thing we need to know about our turbaned fellows. That's it. Right. Sorry, I intervened.
Pulkaji, you want to say something? You want to close down now, quickly.
मेरा तो कमेंट है जी. First of all, let me tell you, Satnam Bains was junior to Mr. Colin. And this Khalra case which you have mentioned, the Khalra was liquidated. That very case Colin was doing before Human Rights Commission.
That's great.
And he has been doing it. That's what he was referring to. दूसरी गल ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰਮੇਸ਼ਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਬੁੱਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਜੋ ਇਹ ਸਾਈਡ ਆ ਇਹਦੀ ਦੂਜੀ ਸਾਈਡ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਤੇ ਵਰਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਦੂਜੀ ਸਾਈਡ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖ ਸੰਸਥਾਵਾਂ HEPC ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਆ ਅਤੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਫੋਰਮ ਦਾ ਸਟੈਂਡ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਇਹੀ ਰਿਹਾ ਐਕਸੈਸਿਸ ਵਿਚ ਵਾਸ ਡਨ ਬਾਈ ਦਾ ਆਰਮੀ ਓਵਰ ਦੇਅਰ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਇਟ ਇਜ਼ ਨੋਟ ਕਿ ਆਰਮੀ ਉੱਥੇ ਗਈ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਕੱਲਾ ਫਾਇਰ ਕਰਤਾ ਉਹ ਜੋ ਕੁਛ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹ ਹੁਣ ਲੰਬੀ ਸਟੋਰੀ ਲੰਬੀ ਚੌੜੀ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਮੈਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਾਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ ਅਤੇ ਮਗਰ ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਉੱਥੇ 2 ਬੰਦੇ ਆਏ ਆਰਮੀ ਨੇ ਘੇਰਾ ਪਾਇਆ ਵਾ ਸੀ 2 ਬੰਦੇ ਆਏ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਲੌਂਗੋਪਾਲ ਕੋਲੇ ਗਏ ਫਿਰ ਭਿੰਡਰਾਂਵਾਲਾ ਕੋਲੇ ਗਏ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਉਹ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਤੋਂ ਆਏ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਡਿਕਲੇਅਰ ਕਰ ਦਿਓ ਆਰਮੀ ਨੇ ਘੇਰਾ ਪਾਇਆ ਵਾ ਅਤੇ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਦੇ ਏਜੰਟ ਅੰਦਰ ਵੜ ਗਏ ਉਹ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਸ ਦੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਇੰਦਰਾ ਗਾਂਧੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਜਸਟੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਹਰਮੰਦਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ 'ਤੇ ਅਟੈਕ ਹਰਮੰਦਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ 'ਤੇ ਸੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਖੁਸ਼ਵੰਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਕਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਹੁਣ ਓਪਨਲੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਅਕਾਲ ਤਖਤ ਰਗੜਦਾ ਸੀ ਨਾ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਅੱਖਾਂ 'ਚ ਫਰੋਮ ਦਾ ਟਾਈਮ ਆਫ ਐਮਰਜੈਂਸੀ ਥਰੂ ਆਊਟ ਐਮਰਜੈਂਸੀ 19 ਦੇ 19 ਮਹੀਨੇ ਅਕਾਲ ਤਖਤ ਤੋਂ ਜੱਥਾ ਨਿਕਲਿਆ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨੇ ਚੁੱਪ ਕਰਾ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ ਇੰਦਰਾ ਗਾਂਧੀ ਨੇ BJP ਵਾਲੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਕੱਲਾ ਤੇ ਕੱਲਾ ਇੱਕ ਇਹ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਜੋ ਜੱਥਾ ਨਿਕਲਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਜੱਥਾ ਨਿਕਲ ਕੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਐਮਰਜੈਂਸੀ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਨਾਅਰੇ ਲਾਉਂਦਾ ਸੀ ਥਰੂ ਆਊਟ 19 ਮੰਥ ਆਫ ਐਮਰਜੈਂਸੀ ਅੱਛਾ ਉਹਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਫ਼ਰ ਵੀ ਬੜਾ ਸਫ਼ਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਜਥੇਦਾਰ ਸੰਤੋਖ ਸਿੰਘ ਇੰਦਰਾ ਗਾਂਧੀ ਨੇ ਸਰ ਸੰਤੋਖ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਕਾਲੀਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਮੇਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਓ ਜਥੇਦਾਰ ਸੰਤੋਖ ਸਿੰਘ ਟੌੜਾ ਨੂੰ ਅਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੋ ਹੋਰ ਲੀਡਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਇਆ ਇੰਦਰਾ ਗਾਂਧੀ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਈ ਇੰਦਰਾ ਗਾਂਧੀ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਟਾਰਗੇਟ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਟਾਰਗੇਟ ਤਾਂ ਮੇਰਾ BJP ਵਾਲੇ ਅਤੇ ਉਦੋਂ ਜਨਸੰਘ ਉਹ ਨੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਟਾਰਗੇਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿਉਂ ਐਜੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੱਸੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ ਡਿਮਾਂਡ ਸੀ ਉਦੋਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਸਪੀਕਿੰਗ ਏਰੀਆ ਸਾਡੀ ਡਿਮਾਂਡ ਸੀ ਚੰਡੀਗੜ੍ਹ ਉਹਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਦੱਸੋ ਕੀ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਟੌੜਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਗਏ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵਾਪਸ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਸੰਤ ਲੌਂਗੋਵਾਲ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਬਾਦਲ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਬਾਦਲ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਹੁਣ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀ ਹੋਇਆ ਲੌਂਗੋਵਾਲ ਜੀ ਤੋਂ ਕਹਾ ਤਾ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕੀਤੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਐਜੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਵਿਡਰਾ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਫ਼ਰ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਇੰਦਰਾ ਗਾਂਧੀ ਨੇ 1976 'ਚ ਆਰਡਰ ਪਾਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਇਹ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਪਾਣੀ ਲਿਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ 1976 ਦਾ ਇੰਦਰਾ ਗਾਂਧੀ ਦਾ ਟੋਟਲੀ ਇਲੀਗਲ ਆਰਡਰ ਆ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਹੁਣ ਸਫ਼ਰ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਇਹ ਬੜਾ ਕੁਛ ਆ ਇਹ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਅੱਖਾਂ 'ਚ ਅਕਾਲ ਤਖਤ ਰਗੜਦਾ ਸੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਤਖਤ ਨੂੰ ਢਾਉਣਾ ਸੀ ਉਹਨੇ ਭੇਜੇ ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਸ ਦੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਐਕਸ਼ਨ ਜਸਟੀਫਾਈ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਦੂਜੀ ਸਾਈਡ ਆ ਇਹ ਮੈਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਦੱਸਣੀ ਸੀ
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਫੁਲਕਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਯੂ ਕਲੈਰੀਫਾਈਡ ਫਰਦਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਛ ਹੈਗਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਛ ਹੈ ਬਟ ਵੀ ਕੰਕਲੂਡ ਹੈ I have some appeals to make before I request President to say a word of thanks. ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸੱਜਣ ਨਵੇਂ ਆਏ ਨੇ the membership to the Sikh Forum is open. They can take their membership form and become a life member. We are looking for a middle-aged group, professional, academic, defense personnel retired, bureaucrats, technocrats, who can be a think tank and who can execute the enlarged scope of the Sikh Forum which we have now started. So, ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨੰਬਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣੇ ਉਹ ਬਣਨ ਔਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਦੋਸਤਾਂ ਯਾਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਭੇਜਣ, let them become member of this. ਇਸ ਦੇ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਕੁਝ ਲਿਟਰੇਚਰ ਪਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ, ਮੈਗਜ਼ੀਨ ਪਏ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਫੋਰਮ ਦਾ ਕਢਾਇਆ ਸੀ ਲਾਸਟ ਟਾਈਮ, ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ 1 ਨਵੰਬਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਵਾਂਗੇ, that will be part of the fundraising exercise also. We request all to contribute some good articles, progressive, reform the articles on Dio. They could be covering the period of June and November 84, plus other progressive reform in the society as a whole. We'll look forward to that and we'll publish it in those things. And then there are other literatures lying like the Sajjan Kumar's conviction case, they are lying there. There are some journals of the Sikh Review, which is published from Calcutta for the last 70 years, goes worldwide. The complimentary copies available free of cost. You can pick up those also. And those who want to read regularly, they can subscribe to it. So with this, I think we are concluding it. And I request Ravinder Ahuja to say something. He's the gentleman at some point. Anything specific? Bataiye. Okay. Just 1 minute only.
Just 1 minute. I'm Asad and I teach at Khalsa College, Delhi University. I've got a few observations to make, but I hope it would have been better had it been not only a Sikh gathering. मैं जब खालसा कॉलेज ज्वाइन किया था आज से तकरीबन 30 साल पहले, तो I had an anti-Sikh feeling and it was something that they must be asking for Khalistan and something like that. Though I witnessed as a small teenager when 1984 happened. I mean, I was born and brought up in Delhi. मेरे को आज तक एक बंदा टीचिंग नॉन टीचिंग स्टाफ स्टूडेंट कम्युनिटी में एक बंदा मेरे को खालिस्तानी नहीं मिला, not even one. And I have got, I have pinpointed, because I am neither a Hindu nor a Sikh. I've pinpointed, and there are people, I must say it bluntly, there are people who hate Hindus. Who are these people who hate Hindus? They are those people, they are those Sikhs who have suffered in 1984. Either they or their family members. तो ये stereotype बन जाता है. Khalsa College में majority of the teachers are non-Sikhs. Majority of the students are non-Sikhs. But a particular stereotype has been created, and it's very hard for people like us to do away with that kind of a stereotype. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Asad Ahmed. I teach history at Khalsa. Asad, ASE. SGTV Khalsa. Main campus.
We've had a very intense and very interesting, very revealing evening today. And I thank Mr. Rameshinder Singh ji and Mr. Colin Gonzalez to make this evening for us. Thank you very much, sir. And to all of you who have come, who've taken out time today and giving strength to the movement by the Sikh Forum, I'm extremely grateful. And I carry forward the request of Pratap Singh ji that you convey our message to all the people in your circles that they also join the Sikh Forum and give us strength. With that, we end. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Also thanks to the media and Inderpreet Singh, his team, who has been covering this event. We have a distinguished audience here. You all know about it. Ambassador Navtesh Sarna, Manjeev Puri, we have Gurmeet Singh ji, Vice Chancellor, Pondicherry University, H.S. Nag. We have another legal luminaries with us, Mr. Chabra and Mr. Bawa, Amrik Bawa.